The one thing I hope never gets misconstrued when I'm teaching, when I'm practicing, when I'm sharing my insights and values is pleasure in and of itself is not a negative thing. It's not evil. It's not that it's something that we have to avoid. It's that it is cheap. It is finite. It is fleeting, right? And I would have you seek joy as opposed to pleasure. Joy is more nourishing. It's more satiating. It permeates deeper into your body, into your mind, into your soul. And that's the thing that you are going to seek. But this video really isn't about that. This video is about how do you as a man have a healthy relationship with pleasure? How do you recognize when pleasure has perhaps become the driver of you instead of you driving yourself? Right. So as always, gentlemen, I have well, not as always, but today we have another mind map. So pleasure as medicine, repairing your relationship with pleasure through occult practices. So at the end here, and I've been a little bit hesitant to share some of these because maybe the practices aren't as, what would you say, PG or readily acceptable, but I'll share them, right? And I think you have an open mind to come to terms with this. But if you do, you'll find them extremely powerful. But let's start with the premise first and foremost. So men will continue to spiral down degenerate holes of pleasure-seeking behavior until they learn to repair their relationship with dopamine. So I was speaking with one of my clients a couple of weeks ago about some of his particular vices. Now, if you're a man living in this modern world, then you will have some kind of vice, be it smoking, be it drugs, be it porn, be it any kind of paraphernalia that has a hold over you. And when you think about it, the action that we are proceeding to go down isn't really to eliminate these tropes per se. It's actually to repair our relationship that we have with dopamine, because I don't believe these things, even of themselves, are inherently immoral, bad, evil, whatever the case may be. It's merely your relationship you have with these things. Even pornography, which might sound silly to say, and maybe that's an argument for another day, but it starts with you. It starts about jurisdiction over this animal, right? If we are to control ourselves, then these things won't ever be a problem. And it starts with a healthy relationship with our reward centers. So the two common problems I see is desensitivity and attention spans being completely corrupted. So super stimuli like the ones that I've mentioned before, including porn, Xanax, Coke, gives us huge peaks and drops throughout our reward system. These huge peaks and valleys, I call them. Now, whilst I believe people can have a healthy relationship with almost any drug, I believe most people would do better not to experience them in the first place. So what do I mean by that? I mean, once you have a reference point, once you have something comparable to the kind of pleasures that you see here, nothing else even comes close to the experience. So I've kind of laid out a little analogy here. Now, I want you to block out this part here, this 1 and 2. I want you to completely eliminate the experience of porn, masturbation, and orgasm and benzodiazepines in your existence. Imagine you've never seen porn and you've never been addicted or tried benzos, right? If you're at school, maybe you're 10 years old and you're listening to music, that might be, and I remember these days, the most pleasurable thing you experience, right? That is a 10 out of 10 on your pleasure scale, is listening to a new album. You know, I was into a lot of kind of like rock music when I was younger. I loved Tool, right? So a new Tool album will come out and listen to Tool. You know, those listening experience for me were a 10 out of 10, right? And then what happened a couple of years later is I got an Xbox 360, right? And then I stopped listening to music and I started playing Xbox 360. I started playing Halo 3 and Modern Warfare 2, right? And my reference point for pleasure went up a couple notches, right? So now music was like a 7 and video games was like a 10. And then what happened after video games? I found pornography, right? And then the video games went down to a 7, music went down to a 5, and then porn was number 10, right? So guys, what I'm trying to tell you is that you have to be careful about what you allow yourself to experience, because if you've got something comparable, then nothing else is going to feel even remotely pleasurable. Your dopamine centers have been fried. So novel pleasure becomes very numbing, You don't get that joy. You don't get that secretion of the dopamine between your synaptic clefts and your neurochemistry. So that's problem number one. The second problem is the modern attention span is comparable to a 6-year-old. There are various modern experiences there are various modern traps that rob you of the opportunity to experience pleasure and dopamine because your focus switches before you can experience it. So here's the thing. There is a time delay from when you're experiencing something like music, when you're experiencing something like, a walk in the park, before you can secrete dopamine. It's like when you're listening to an album or a record. As soon as the album starts playing, dopamine doesn't, secrete. It takes a while to get into the song, and that's just one example of if you're constantly switching your attention between different things, you're not allowing yourself naturally to experience the dopamine that would have been secreted if you just paid attention. So there are many things that people do: watching TV while scrolling on their phone, playing video games while watching TV, listening to music while working out. Controversial, I know. Listening to music while meditating. The more we divide our attention, the less we can have internal sensitivity to one or the other tasks giving us pleasure. It's like being stuck between a train between two beautiful destinations. Just pick a destination, go there and experience it, right? If you're gonna, and again guys, I'm not against leisure. If you're gonna watch a sports event, watch the sports event, right? Don't just be sitting there scrolling on your phone. Be engaged, allow yourself to experience pleasure. That is a crucial point, right? It's am I allowing myself the time to experience that pleasure? Am I being sensitive to how I'm feeling while I'm engaging in that activity, right? So what is the simple repairing protocol that I would have you do? The first one has to be awareness, consciousness, and presence, which is a direct reaction to the latter point. You have to begin to cultivate and improve relationship with pleasure just by being aware of it. Be prepared to do a single novel task that secretes pleasure and use your attention to magnify and amplify the feeling of pleasure. So walking outside in the park, bring your attention to the muscles that are engaged in that activity. Feel the warmth of the sun on your skin, the cool, fresh air permeating your lungs, right? When you give more attention to these micro sensations, you start to secrete more dopamine as a response. But it starts with paying attention. And don't get me wrong, guys, there is a steep learning curve to this because most of you are addicted. So you have to forego a sucky period of weaning yourself off your attention span being absolutely fried. The second is don't feel guilty rewarding yourself. Now, many people in this space will condemn you for taking moments of leisure. And frankly, this goes against the dualistic nature of the 3D realm we live in, meaning self-improvement people like myself, like other people that you like, will tell you to forego some of the things that I've been speaking about previously. I don't believe this is having a healthy relationship or pleasure. And if you're feeling guilty, shameful, anxious, stressed because you can't consciously take time away from work to have leisure, to sit in yin, you're further putting more restraints on dopamine, and then you go and binge it later on with junk food, with video games, with pornography, because you're watching football and you're feeling guilty that you're doing that. Just sit there and have the experience, dude. Just have the experience. You're allowed to have that experience, right? All work and no play makes Jack a very, very dull boy. And I like to schedule these in. And I've even got video games in here, But as I prefaced, it depends on the relationship you have with the thing, right? If you're doing your due diligence, then you'll never feel guilty about enjoying pleasure. If you're working on your online business, you've done, you're content with your life, money's coming in, experience pleasure. Go and experience pleasure. You have earned it, and don't feel guilty about it. I know that's easier said than done because nobody is harder on themselves than I am. But take it from somebody that has been through that neurosis, it's not worth it. It's not worth it. And you'll get to where you want to go. The most optimal path isn't this 9-to-4 grind mentality. It's how do I balance work and play in a healthy way without letting play take over my life. But if you find yourself playing Call of Duty when you should be working, or at your job, something's fundamentally wrong, and you need to change. So the occult forms of pleasure. Now, again, I preface this at the start. I was hesitant to share this because you have to have an open mind to accept some of these things. This will be a key in a lot of people's puzzles, especially with things like SR involved. And these are real. These are real things. I wanted to take the time to have personal experience with one of these, and I can report back that these are real things that you can experience. So, the first one is orgastic meditation. Now, I've had experiences in meditation where the only thing comparable will be things like the rush of dopamine, the swelling, the intensity of an orgasm, a sexual orgasm, but in the head. I know, sounds strange, sounds weird, sounds un-PG, but the reality is these kinds of things happen. So I'm not proficient in experiencing, what would you say, intentionally experiencing these myself, but my meditations in the last 6 months have gotten to a point where they're so consistent and they're so strong that sitting down on the pillow in peaceful silence in itself is a task that secretes sufficient amounts of dopamine for me. And that's what I mean when you're healing your reward centers. This will happen. Novel things become more pleasurable, especially if you're focusing your intention on them. Pleasure can be a meditative object. Can you imagine that? Instead of focusing on the breath, focus on the peaceful qualities and the relaxation of your muscles and your breath and your diaphragm and your belly and your feet and your legs and your genitals even. That can be your object of meditation, and it's a great form of meditation. Now, the second is NEOs, dry orgasms, non-ejaculatory orgasms. So, many men who are looking to use their sexual energy to fuel their lives end up repressing their sexual energy. This is something that I did when I went on this path of abstinence. They become more neurotic, more shameful, and guilty when they cannot practice sexual abstinence because they are addicted to online material, promiscuity, etc., etc. A powerful outlet to experience sexual energy and dopamine without wasting sexual fluid is through NEOs, non-ejaculatory orgasms. This is a reality for many men. So, I'm hesitant to do a video on this and go into any more explicit detail because of the nature of what I'm talking about and how it will be received, I guess. But here's something that I just want you to sit with. This is real. This is something that men can do. This is something I can do. And the experience you get is, in my opinion, better, and you can experience it more frequently than traditional forms of male orgasms. You can learn this if you are an adept meditator. You have to be very sensitive to the internal mechanisms of your body. And again, like I mentioned, this is a way for you to experience pleasure without guilt. And, there's nothing... I can't wait to see the comments for this one. There's nothing weird about it. The only stimuli you are using are muscular contractions in your pelvic floor and this. That is all you need. All you need. And you can experience pleasure beyond something you've ever experienced in your life, and more frequently in one session. And that is all I will say on that. If you are looking for more information, I can provide it, and depending on the interest, maybe I'll do a follow-up video. But again, due to the nature of this, I have some hesitancy before it. But it is a very powerful tool. Very powerful and real. And maybe you guys are interested in this stuff. Maybe you would have heard of this shit before, and I certainly did. and I discarded it because I didn't believe there was any credibility behind it, because you're reading Reddit posts from people that you probably don't think are credible. If you're a subscriber to me, if you value what I say, if I've provided you any insight, if I made your life even 0.1% better, and you have some kind of faith and trust in me, this is real. This is real. You can be doing this, and you will never look at sex the same ever again. Ever again. That's a fact, not a theory. So, that being said, gentlemen, I hope this was valuable. I hope this was insightful, and I will speak to you again very, very soon. Take care.